What is up, everyone, and welcome to another installment of What If Anime Characters Were Pokemon. In case you haven't seen my previous videos in this series, I normally cover characters from various different anime, but today we're celebrating the Season 5 premiere of everyone's favorite high school superhero show by covering the entire roster of Class 1A in Boku no Hero Academia. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this anime, so make sure to hit that like button if you're excited. And if you somehow haven't seen it yet, I mean, what the heck are you doing? Maybe this video will inspire you to check it out, as it's probably my favorite shonen to come out in the last decade, and I can't get enough of it. So let's get started right away with the main character, Deku. Now, I've already covered Deku more in depth in a previous episode, but real quick we'll go over him again because I've actually got some updates here. He previously was just a normal type because of course he was born quirkless, but since inheriting the power of One for All, this boy has been working hard getting them gains. So I've decided to add on the fighting type since that is his specialty, you know, hand-to-hand combat. And I've also changed his power-up move to No Retreat, which in the Pokemon games raises every single stat, like your attack, special attack, defenses, and speed, because the One for All full cowling really does improve all of Deku's abilities. And you know, once this boy is serious about a fight, he ain't backing down, so No Retreat fits him perfectly. Again, if you want to see Deku broken down more in detail, I've covered him in a previous video, which you should see somewhere on screen or at the end of the video. You can go check out the other episodes, but we're gonna move on to Best Girl. Actually, I shouldn't say that because every girl in this show is best girl. But Uraraka definitely gets the most screen time, being one of Deku's closest friends in Class 1A with her quirk Zero Gravity, which allows her to control the gravity of objects, making them either weightless or super duper heavy, which is why I went with the type Psychic. So her first two moves are pretty self-explanatory, with Gravity and Telekinesis making things float or super heavy. Seismic Toss, though, is a bit more specific as a reference to the gunhead martial arts that she learned during the hero internship arc, and later made great use of it with the RKO out of nowhere against Himiko Toga. And finally, we've got Diamond Storm, because the main use of her quirk so far in the series has been floating up a bunch of rocks into the air and then letting them loose on the enemy, crushing them with the power of sheer gravity. Oh, and her ability Levitate, because of course she can also make herself weightless and float around flying freely. And we're continuing in order of screen time, though technically this guy probably has the second most after Deku, and that is the Great Explosion Murder God, Bakugo. Hero name still pending. I don't know if you can really have murder in your superhero name. But his first move will be Flame Charge, which is a reference to Bakugo blasting fire from the palms of his hands and using that to propel himself either forward or into the air with his quirk, which is actually called Explosion. But you might notice that I don't actually have the move Explosion here because he doesn't really hurt himself no matter how big of an explosion he makes. It only seems to affect those around him. So instead I went with Eruption as his super move, and it fits with his personality. He's kind of a hothead, doesn't really take shit from anybody, eventually causing him to erupt. Which leads me to his hidden ability, Anger Point. First time in the series where we're gonna have hidden abilities, because some of these characters just have way too many details to their quirks and personalities. And Bakugo's not always angry, but he sure is always intimidating, which is why that's his main ability. Even his own teammates in Class 1A are scared of him. Okay, but next we actually have everyone's best frog girl, Froppy, whose real name is Suyu, but she would really prefer if you call her Sue. You can see the big old frog tongue sticking out there, and Lick is basically the only Pokemon move that specifically involves your tongue, so she had to have that one. Though I feel like in the show, she usually uses her tongue to save people. Of course, she's got Bounce because, you know, she's a frog and they do be bouncing.
I'm sorry for hopping, but hopping's what I do. And one of these days I'll save your ass, cause that's what Froppy do.
Camouflage is one of her lesser known abilities, but she actually can blend into her environments. And finally, Flip Turn, mainly because I wanted her to have a water move, being a water type, and she is a pretty good swimmer, being a frog. which is why she's got the ability Swift Swim, which technically boosts speed in rain, but we'll just say in water in general because she is a pretty damn good swimmer under the sea. Up next, we got the sturdy hero Red Riot, whose quirk Hardening allows him to literally harden his body into this jagged rock-like form. So because of the appearance of his quirk, I went with Rock type, and of course he's got Harden, but his other moves being Counter and Obstruct are kind of similar in that they block enemy attacks, but after blocking enough damage, he can definitely retaliate, as seen in his fight versus Rappa, where he first showed off his super move, Red Riot Unbreakable, going plus ultra, taking so many hits, and then finally countering with a massive Rock Wreckin' Red Gauntlet, which left the boy basically unconscious for the next couple of episodes, and Rock Wrecker in Pokemon makes you take the next turn to recharge after using it. And of course Sturdy, because he's literally called the Sturdy Hero, and it just fits with his rocky nature and never backing down even when he's taken a pummeling. As the final member of the Bakugo boys, we got Kaminari, also known as Charge Bolt. Although I barely ever see them mention his hero name, but he is of course going to be an electric type since his quirk, Charge, lets him release electricity out of his body. But he can't really control it at first, so his main move is going to be Discharge, which actually hits all Pokemon on the field, including your own allies, which is why his teammates had to come up with some creative ways to work around him. Electric terrain is a bit of a weird one, since his electricity going everywhere probably leaves a little bit of residue around, but Charge is literally the name of his quirk, and also a bit of a sneaky reference to how he uses his power to charge electronic devices like his friend's phone. That's a real great use of a superpower. Finally, we've got Zap Cannon, which represents his sharp shooting gear he gets a little later in the show, that allows him to more specifically target his ability by shooting these little discs that then the electricity gets drawn to. But landing those ain't that easy, so Zap Cannon's low accuracy kind of reflects that. And he's basically a human lightning rod, so that's his ability. Though I guess Volt Absorb works too, since he can probably take a lightning bolt to the face and probably be okay. But his hidden ability Static is my personal favorite, because if an enemy actually got up to touch him, they would probably be shocked into paralysis. Moving on to the next girl, we got my best girl, Momo, mainly because her name is Momo and Mo, but also because she's really creative with her quirk Creation, which allows her to create objects out of her own body, such as weapons and tools. So I gave her the move Metronome, which in Pokemon selects a random move from the entire catalog for your Pokemon to use, because Momo can literally create anything from her body as long as she knows the chemical composition of it. Now she can attack, but she can also protect, as shown with Kaminari earlier when she made that big insulated sheet. And Foresight, because Momo is known as one of the smartest characters, if not the smartest in Class 1A, which also relates to her ability being analytic. And finally, Flash Cannon, because probably her favorite thing to make using her quirk is a big-ass cannon, much like our favorite little alchemist. It's time for a speed round with Ida, whose quirk Engine lets him blast off at super speeds, hence him having the move Extreme Speed. And like I said, his quirk is named Engine, like a car engine, so Shift Gear makes perfect sense both in the name and because in the Pokemon games it actually raises your speed and attack power. So his last two moves are going to be kick moves, since most of Ida's combat abilities revolve around him using speed to kick enemies real fast and real hard. First, Thunderous Kick, because he moves lightning quick, and Mega Kick, because it's just the hardest kick that you can do, and this boy is a really good kicker. And he's a pure normal type despite wearing steel armor, since it's actually been stated that it's made from very lightweight metal and more for decoration than protection. I don't think I really need to mention why his ability is Speed Boost, right? So the speed round continues with Aoyama, whose hero name is actually Can't Stop Twinkling. I can't even say that without laughing. But this dude is a fairy type because he's got twinkling in his name. And with the ability Pixelate, which turns normal type moves into fairy moves, perfectly represents his one and maybe only attack, the Naval Buffet Laser, where he shoots a giant beam of light out of his belly, but makes his little tummy hurt afterwards. So Hyper Beam is perfect since you have to recharge the turn after using it. And in case you haven't noticed, all the characters have a specific Pokeball that they're in, which for Aoyama is the Friend Ball since he's real friendly, especially with Deku. Koji Koda is going to be another quick one, whose quirk Voice allows him to talk and control animals, which is why he's got nature power, which has a different effect depending on where you use it, like in the forest or in a rocky area, it'll turn into a different Pokemon move, representing how different animals can assist him in different ways depending on, what's around him in nature. But mostly he just uses it to have the little birds scout the area for him. Anyway, I made him ground type because he's not only a very grounded individual, but I feel that being one with nature and the animals is best represented by ground, if not maybe grass type. And his ability Rattled represents his entomophobia, or deathly fear of bugs. Come on, man, there ain't nothing scary about that. Let's wrap up this speed round with Mina Ashido, who does have more moves than the last few, but Pinky with her quirk Acid is of course going to be a poison type since her quirk is Acid, and that's also literally a Pokemon move, but I decided to give her Acid Spray instead, since that's mainly how she uses it, is like by spreading, well, not really a spray, so maybe I should have just gave her Acid. You know what, we're changing it up on the spot. Her next move, Acid Armor, represents her ability Acid Veil, where she creates thick walls of acid to protect herself from enemies, and Acid Armor in the game sharply raises your defenses. Sludge Wave is a little more accurate to how I would describe her using her quirk. In a waving motion, she just spreads it out over whatever she's trying to corrode, which leads me to her ability Corrosion, which allows Pokemon to poison targets even if they're steel or poison type, and she has definitely been shown to even melt down steel with her corrosive acid. But you might notice she's got a hidden ability, and this might be one of my favorites here, as a reference to the school festival arc where Class 1A decided to put on a little dance performance, and Ashido was breaking it down with her dance moves.
Here we go.
I don't know why I'm so excited to talk about my boy Mineta. He is such a meme. From his quirk to his hero name being Grape Juice, and most distinctively his pervy personality, which is why I decided to make him a dark type, because at least in early Pokemon, the dark type referred to dirty fighting rather than darkness itself, and this dude is definitely dirty. And his first move, Covet, is a perfect example of this, as covet means yearning to possess or have something. In Mineta's case, he just wants the boobies. Flatter because he just can't help himself from complimenting every girl, even going so far as to sign up for Mount Lady's internship, basically being turned into her simp. But his next two moves actually represent his quirk. So first is Sticky Web, because those little balls on his head can actually make any object stick really hard onto each other. So that's, of course, why his ability is also Sticky Hold. And finally, Barrage, which represents his super move, or just him throwing a barrage of sticky balls over and over until his scalp is literally bleeding. Wait, this guy's in Class 1A? I swear, this is probably the most forgettable character, but we got Rikido Sato, also known as Sugar Man, with his quirk Sugar Rush, which allows him to power up, but only when he eats sweets. And like, honestly, I haven't seen this guy do anything important in the show or movies yet, but somehow that's still enough to make a move set. Starting with Bulk Up, because that's his main power, is just when he eats sweets, he bulks up. And I've mainly seen him use his strength to actually throw his teammates long distances, so I had to give him Circle Throw. He's also the only character with the actual move Superpower, despite all of them having superpowers. You know, I had to fit it somewhere into the video, and this guy's just very boring otherwise, but I mean, his last move is a little bit redeeming with Decorate, which might be a little confusing if you haven't seen the show, but for anyone that knows, this dude's true passion ain't being a superhero. He is actually Japan's next top baker. Our next character is Toru Hagakure, also known as Invisible Girl, and I tried to get her in the video, but she just wouldn't show up, I guess. But her quirk is, of course, turning invisible, which is why she's got the ability Clear Body, and Fake Out, because she can pull off a mean sneak attack on the enemy if they don't see her coming, literally. But her super move, Warp Refraction, allows her to flash the enemy. Also, literally, they just can't tell because she's invisible, but like she's literally naked. So this is a double flash that also blinds the enemy. Oh, there she is. Our next classmate is Hanta Seto, whose quirk Tape allows him to do his best Spider-Man impression, shooting out strings of tape, basically zip around the battlefield almost like he's flying or web swinging like Spider-Man. Which is why I actually made him a normal and flying type, because for the most part he's pretty normal, but almost every time he's seen flying around, which is why his main attack is going to be Acrobatics, that does double damage when the Pokemon isn't carrying an item. And I don't think his weird tape shoe and elbows count as an item, so he's very spry and acrobatic, tying down enemies with his string shot. Or well, it's not technically string, but that's like the closest thing in terms of Pokemon, so he's also got Bind because he can tie down enemies with his tape. And finally, Ally Switch, since the main use of his ability in the show is actually taping down his teammates to either yank them out of danger or launch them into the air for combo attacks. He actually did a lot in that movie. I feel like this guy is pretty underrated in terms of power, but still not the most underrated hero. We'll get to him very soon. First, let's take a look at Jito, also known as Earphone Jack, who gives a whole new meaning to pass me the aux cable. This girl would literally pass you her earlobe. But these weird little appendages can actually plug into the equipment on her wrist and amplify her own heartbeat to let out devastating sound waves. And that's what Uproar and Metal Sound represent. But she can also use her earlobes to plug into walls and listen for sound vibrations that can give off enemy locations, making her really good for recon missions. And there's not really a Pokemon move like that, so Supersonic is the closest thing I could think of. You can think of it like she's got supersonic hearing. But finally we've got Boom Burst. When she plugs into her Doc Martens, she unleashes her drip upon the whole battlefield, shaking the ground below. And this is only amplified by her ability being Punk Rock, which is another sneaky reference to the school festival art where Jito actually played the electric guitar. But this will power up sound-based moves, and it also lets you take half damage from sound moves, which is actually kind of the opposite with Jito in the show. I think she's actually more susceptible to sound-based attacks, at least if she's like plugged into the wall and someone screeches right into it. Yeah, I'm cringing just thinking about it. Now for the real most underrated character, we got Shoji, the tentacle hero, whose name is Tentacole? Like, is his name Cole? I don't understand what's going on here, but I always thought he looked more like a spider, but his quirk is named Tentacle, so I guess he's an octopus, and therefore he's got Octolock as his main move. Or well, his quirk is actually called Dupla Arms, and it lets him grow extra body parts from his arms, such as ears, eyes, more fists to punch with. And these bonus body parts are actually stronger than his main ones, so he's an excellent recon hero since he can detect enemies from miles away with his super hearing and vision, which is why I gave him the move Detect, as he's literally able to detect enemies coming from a mile away. He can also use his wing-like form to protect allies on his back, and no one saw it coming, so I gave him Quick Guard. And finally, Close Combat, which is his super move where he just grows extra punching fists and pummels down on the enemy. Innards Out is a bit of an odd choice for an ability, at least in terms of Pokemon. It doesn't really fit him, but just name-wise, it makes perfect sense as he's producing extra body parts from the inside out. Although it's not technically his innards, but like, just let that one slide, alright? Oh, don't tell me you forgot about Tail Man. This is like a whole underrated segment, as this guy doesn't get nearly enough credit for how powerful he is with his tail quirk, which is exactly what he sounds like. He's just got a big old tail, but boy does he go hard with that tail. using it not only to slap the shit out of people, but also to propel himself into the air or spin around and block enemy attacks. Hence why I gave him Rapid Spin and Rolling Kick. Although he technically doesn't kick, this represents his super move, the Tornado Tail Dance, where he spins in the air and slams down with his third leg. I realize now how that could be misinterpreted. But finally we've got Power Whip, which might seem weird since it's a grass move, but it's like the strongest whip kind of attack. If that tail came down right on your head, it would hurt, man. So I wasn't just gonna give him Tail Whip. Power Whip definitely fits better. And his ability Inner Focus was probably one of the hardest ones to pick, because there isn't any ability about like tails or anything, but Inner Focus more represents his resolve to be strong despite his quirk not being the craziest compared to some of his classmates. Number 19 is Fumikage Tokoyami, more commonly known as the Edgy Bird Guy. Or is that the Edgy Bird Guy? We'll go with Darkness Bird, as his quirk, Dark Shadow, basically grants him a stand from JoJo in the form of this shadowy bird hovering over him. And I debated making him a Dark Ghost type instead of Dark Flying because that thing straight up looks like a ghost, and it kind of fits some of the moves that you're gonna see here, like Shadow Claw, which is his main form of attack. Now, Dark Shadow might actually be one of the strongest quirks in the whole show, because the darker it gets, the more powerful Dark Shadow gets, to the point where Tokoyami can't even control it anymore, as it goes into Ragnarok mode, represented here by the move Lash Out, which was shown to be powerful enough to take down even some A-tier villains. But when it's under control, Dark Shadow's strongest move is Black Abyss, where Tokoyami basically dons it like dark armor, powering up his own physical abilities and even allowing him to fly through the air, which is why I gave him Oblivion Wing, the signature move of Yveltal, the legendary dark and flying nightmare. Finally, we have Shadow Force, because there isn't really a super powerful dark move that fit his abilities, and it has Shadow in the name just like his quirk, so we're going with it. Now I want to play a little trivia game with you guys, because we've got one more hero left in Class 1A, and I want you to guess who it is. Just think about it in your head. Who have we not covered in this video yet? Yep, it's best boy Shoto Todoroki, the half-hot, half-cold bastard, who is obviously going to be an ice and fire type. But he's a lot more skilled with his ice half, since for the longest time he refused to use his fire out of resentment for his father. So I've decided to tone down his fire moves a little bit. We could have gone real crazy and given him something like Fire Blast, but I think Fire Spin and Inferno better represent how his fire abilities look in the show, with his main hot attack being called the Wall of Flames. When it comes to ice attacks though, Shoto does not f around, with the most notorious being the Heaven-Piercing Ice Wall, represented here by Glaciate, because he basically creates a giant glacier every time he uses it. His best move, however, comes when he combines his two halves into the Flash Freeze Heat Wave, first seen in his battle against Deku in the Sports Festival. And conveniently enough, there's a move in the Pokemon universe called Ice Burn, which is an ice move that also has a chance to burn the target, and I think the damage speaks for itself. Finally, his ability Slush Rush represents how Shoto gets around the battlefield, creating ice under his feet as he's running, basically ice skating around the battlefield. Now that's every single classmate of 1A, but let's not forget the most important person in the classroom, because there ain't no class without the teacher. So at number 21, we got a surprise, Aizawa, also known as Eraserhead, the only pro hero on this list, who's going to be a psychic type due to his quirk Erasure, allowing him to erase other people's abilities by simply making eye contact. Sounds pretty psychic to me. But Disable will be his main move, since that's like the whole thing about his quirk. And the mummy wraps that he uses to tie enemies down have nothing to do with psychic powers, actually. The man trained years to learn how to use them, and at this point makes it look like magic. But I guess he's really just that skilled with them, so that's why he's got Wrap and Block, not letting enemies escape him. And I debated having his final move be Future Sight, but I went with Psy Strike just because he didn't really have an attacking move otherwise, and at least when he's been shown to fight in the anime, he's pretty strong. His ability is Keen Eye because of course his quirk works with his eyes, like he has to maintain eye contact with the enemy to neutralize their abilities. But I also gave him a fun little hidden ability in Insomnia, because I'm not sure if this guy really gets much sleep. And that's it, every member of Class 1A reimagined as Pokemon. Let me know what you thought of my choices and if there's anything you would have changed down in the comments below. If you've seen any superhero series, you know that just as important as our good old heroes are the villains. And this anime has got some real bad ones, with even crazier abilities, so make sure to leave a like down below if you'd like to see me cover the villains of My Hero Academia, or if there's any other anime series that you'd like me to dive into specifically and cover in the next episode of What If. Thank you so much for watching. This is now the 4th video in this series, and I've been really enjoying reimagining anime characters as Pokemon because you guys already know I love Pokemon, but I love anime just as much, and so many of their abilities kind of fit into the world of Pokemon. So this is something I really enjoy doing and looking forward to more. So hopefully you guys will too, and I will catch you in the next one.